Welcome back to TechRadar. I'm Matt Phillips, and I'm joined today by our gaming editor, Vic Hood, because she has had a sneaky preview of The Medium, one of the first next-gen exclusive Xbox games coming to Xbox January 28th. Vic, give us the lowdown. What is The Medium all about?
So The Medium is set in post-communist, like brutalist Poland, and you're obviously a medium called Marianne. So Marianne is like split between two worlds as a medium. She's got like the spirit world and then the real world that she kind of goes between. But Marianne is haunted by visions of like a child's murder, which ultimately brings her to this kind of abandoned hotel resort where she kind of is looking for answers and starts to uncover like quite a horrific tragedy that occurred there and just starts to unravel what exactly is going on.
Yeah, we should mention that all the gameplay you're seeing over the top of us chatting today, guys, that was all supplied by the developer of the game. It's obviously an early look at the game. The game's not finished by any means yet, but it does give you an extended look at the gameplay. And one of the things that surprised me is that we're going back to that kind of old school feel, old school horror feel of a locked off camera as you enter these new rooms. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think that's immediately what kind of hit me is this is a fixed camera approach, which the Bloober Team kind of discussed with us during the preview that they are really heavily influenced by those like original classic horror games. Like particularly they said Silent Hill 2, which is unsurprising given, you know, you've got the composer of Silent Hill on board here. And that was a major influence for them. And you can really see it in the gameplay, not just with the fixed camera, but with the fact that the horror in this game isn't down to kind of jump scares and something. It's the whole ambience. It's the atmosphere. They kind of explained to us that what they wanted was for someone to never feel quite safe, and the jump scares would eventually lose their, you know, their actual scariness. But if they constantly make the player feel unsettled, which I think this game, even watching it does feel like that.
100%.
You startled me.
I did, didn't I? You look real scared. I'm Sadness.
Marianne. Sadness. Is that your name?
So obviously the first part of this gameplay demo people are seeing, you're walking around the world, you're kind of inspecting things around the world and gathering a story that way. How does that play into puzzle elements of the game? And are we getting full-on combat in this game? And are we shooting things? What's going on?
Okay, so the main kind of crux of this is that the game is that dual world that Marianne can go between the real world and the spirit world. That plays a really crucial part in this. So in the gameplay that you'll kind of see, when she's met with puzzles, it's a lot of them are to do with jumping between those worlds. It's not like you can do that kind of willy-nilly as you please. There'll be elements of the game, for example, where you're in the elevator and you know she can't get the elevator to work. It needs power, so she jumps into the spirit world where she can find a spirit well, which charges kind of those abilities that she has, those medium abilities. So you can go back to the elevator, then you charge up the elevator in the spirit world, and then that takes effect in the real world. But as you can see, the spirit world is, you know, much darker. Marianne's got white hair, but also what I found interesting is you can't just stay in the spirit world the whole time. So as you stay in that world, she begins to disintegrate. And when I asked Bloober Team kind of, is there a time limit on that? They compared it to an underwater level, maybe in a game where you dive under and there's a kind of amount of time that you have before you have to come out. So there's not an exact time on that, but if that starts to happen, you can jump back into the real world, then jump back in and kind of go between the two. But it's very much about kind of working in those two worlds to reach your goal. And there is a lot of explorations and it's not necessarily collectibles to pick up, but there are They said subplots, subplots, and more subplots to. So as you can go about, you can either run through the game, or you can take some time, read everything, have a look at everything, and you'll start to uncover maybe some subplots, more
Yeah.
information that may not necessarily pertain to the full story, but if you want that information, it is there. So when it comes to combat, I found this quite interesting. So there's a lot of puzzles, a lot of exploration, but combat seems to take a bit of a back seat in this. You don't even necessarily need to engage in very much combat. So the way the two worlds works is you can only engage in any sort of combat in the spirit world, not in the real world. So if you see a big scary in the real world, what you need to kind of do is avoid them and hide and use your smarts to kind of outwit them and get around them. In the spirit world, you can maybe use some of your abilities, but also, while some situations you may have to use some sort of combat, mostly you have the option to kind of sneak around and outsmart sections, and you don't really have to engage in that combat that much. So it's not going to be all guns blazing shooting down these monsters. You do have like some options to how you approach situations. It seems like some of the situations, maybe those options might not be quite as vast in how you approach it, and you will always have to deal with maybe a monster in some way. But generally, if you want to sneak and run, you can sneak and run as much as possible.
So obviously we haven't actually been able to get hands on ourselves with the game yet, but we've seen quite a bit of it now. So Vic, I'm curious, if you were going to recommend this game to a certain type of gamer, if you really enjoy Control, will you like this? If you really enjoyed Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake, I'm curious, what sort of games do you think people are already into that would mean they would enjoy the medium?
I think that it's obviously going to be one for kind of horror lovers, but horror lovers who like that ambience, that puzzly aspect. So I'd say definitely appealed to me as someone who's a fan of like Resi 2, Resi 3, where it's very much, you're not retreading the old steps like you would in those games. You're not, going backwards and forwards. It's very much linear, but that kind of finding objects, solving puzzles, like uncovering the plot and the subplot and just those eerie vibes. I would say it's anyone who's fan of like those old school horrors, Silent Hill obviously as well, that this is that kind of game. But don't expect to be going into a game where something's going to be jumping out every 2 seconds, like to scare the bejesus out of you. It's not that kind of game. It's a bit more nuanced than that.
The sort of game that won't let you sleep at night, but not because of jump scares, because it'll be
not because of jump scares. It's very much a lasting uncomfortableness. Yeah. Rather than something's jumped out, what if I go around this corner instead? And you're not going to have zombies jump out, I guess, in the way that you would with Resi. Sure. So it's pretty much the ambience that you get with Resi without necessarily there's as many zombies as you would encounter in Resi. Instead, it's some, quite horrifying creatures, which are actually more unsettling than I would say any zombie would be, and they're very creepy. The monster that we see at one point in the gameplay demo that people will be watching is voiced by Troy Baker, and just unnerves me to no end.
You would never know. I mean, let's face it, if a video game comes out nowadays, you expect Troy Baker to be in it, but listening to that monster, you would never know it was him, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, I think it's also quite interesting that Bloober Team also pointed out that even the monsters themselves have an agenda. They are characters within the story as well. So it's not a case of you're just shooting down like any old thing. You will uncover, or you should be able to uncover, why, for example, the Maw that we're seeing in this gameplay trailer is the Maw, and how they play into the overall story, which I'm quite interested to find out.
Good stuff. And then, so I'm curious then, did they give you an idea of how long roughly it will take to play this game? Do we have any idea on sort of the scope and size of the game so far?
No, we haven't been given kind of a scope on that. They've stayed a bit tight-lipped about how long this game will be. As far as I can tell, it's chapters, but I couldn't tell you exactly how many chapters you're looking at, unfortunately.
Yeah, no worries. My thinking on that was, it's coming to Game Pass day one, and I think so many people, hopefully, so many people are going to be getting new Xboxes over Christmas if you were lucky enough to get stock. And this is going to be a really big deal. You know, that January space isn't typically a time where we see a lot of video games coming out. And this kind of old school horror genre has seen a little bit of a revival with sort of Resident Evil taking steps back towards it. But something that really interests me, and now that I have Game Pass, there's no doubt in my mind I'm going to be playing this thing day one, whereas normally perhaps I wouldn't pick up a game like this, mainly because I'm a massive scaredy cat. But but yeah, it gets somebody like me who wouldn't normally pick up this game excited to jump into this game. So I'm curious, do you think, you know, maybe this isn't a Halo Infinite, right? It's not going to sell systems like that. But do you think we're going to see a bigger adoption of a game like this due to Game Pass, due to the new Xboxes, than we would have if it came out last January?
I think so. I think in its own right, this is going to be a great, like, from what I've seen, it looks like it's going to be a great game anyway, and definitely one for like people who are into that genre. But as you said, some people aren't, and Xbox Game Pass does give people the chance to like try that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's really clear with like Observer, which was another Bloober Team also. And I know I personally played Observer because it was on Game Pass, and maybe it's not a game I would have considered because I used to be quite a scaredy cat, and it's only when, you know, the Resi remakes came out that I started to play, and it's because, you know, Alien Isolation was on Game Pass and these different games were on there, and I was like, I can try them, and if I don't like them, then that's fine. I haven't wasted money, and then realized that I really enjoy them. So I think, yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity for people to, like, if it's not for you, then ultimately it won't be for you, but it does show that, you know, Game Pass is great for people to kind of dip their toes maybe in genres that maybe wouldn't quite be their cup of tea otherwise. So I'm excited to see kind of even more people try this game out as a result of that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And if you're interested in seeing the game, I'll make you a deal right now. I will stream the first hour of this game on TechRadar's YouTube channel and Facebook page, so make sure you subscribe and see me wet myself with fear. Yay! Thanks for joining me, Vic. I really appreciate it. Like we say, the Medium is out on January 28th. It's coming day one to Game Pass, obviously, on Xbox and PC. Look forward to seeing you in the stream, guys. Thanks for joining us. And remember to head to techradar.com for all the latest tech news and reviews.
Do you live here? All by yourself?
You wouldn't believe how boring it gets sometimes.
I can imagine. This place must have been...
Oh, yes. So busy. People coming and going all the time.